Perry Como's song was the first gold record ever made in 1958. It was awful for him, though. The shocking truth is now coming out. He didn't want to record his biggest hits, and he secretly wished he had a totally different career. This is the dark story of America's most reluctant superstar, from a $25 million TV deal that locked him up to the studio boss who tried to destroy him. This is the kind of story where it almost seems too good to be true. He was born on May 18th, 1912, in Canonsburg, Pennsylvania. His family came from Italy, and he was the seventh of 13 children. Because they only spoke Italian at home, he didn't start learning English until he went to school. It's hard to imagine now that he can sing so easily to millions of people across America. There was always music in the house, but singing lessons were out of the question because there wasn't enough money. His father worked in a mill and loved music very much. Even though the family was very poor, he made sure that all of his children learned to play an instrument. He bought an old piano for $3, which was a lot of money back then. To play music by ear, little Perry, who was barely old enough to walk, would press the keys and pump the bellows. He wasn't taught. He had the gift. Como could already work when he was 10 years old. A barbershop hired him before and after school, but the pay was only 50 cents a week. He enjoyed the job and got good at it quickly. He got his own chair when he was 13, but he had to stand on a box to reach his kids. He never said it was easy, but his life was hard. Then everything changed when he was 14. Because of a major heart problem, his dad could no longer work. Someone had to help the family out with money, and Como did. Como handled the stress like a man twice his age, when most kids would have given up. He started his own barbershop when he was only 14. This doesn't happen very often. People were eager to hire him as a barber, and he quickly became known as one of the best in the area. But it wasn't just the cuts that made people keep coming back. The people who worked for Como liked it when he sang while he worked. Soon, Greek families in the area knew him as the wedding barber. He did more than just groom the men. He sang for them too. He was making $125 a week, which was a lot of money in the late 1920s because business was so good. For some reason, fate didn't want him to be a barber for the rest of his life. In 1933, Freddie Carlin, the leader of a neighborhood band, asked him to try out. Como had never thought about making a living as a singer, but he thought it might be fun to give it a try. He got the job, and at age 21, he did something that shocked everyone. He quit his job as a barber and a steady income to become a musician. It was hard. Going on tours with the band for 5 years paid him only $28 a week, a lot less than what he made as a barber. He never felt bad about it, though. He was 24 years old when he made a big move in his work in 1936. When he joined Ted Weems' orchestra, he got a good salary of $50 a week, which is about $1,000 today. There was a big chance, but there was a catch. A huge star at the time, Bing Crosby, was thought to sound too much like him. Instead of praising Como's skill, reviewers wrote him off as a copy. In 1937, when they were singing with Decca Records, things got worse. A Decca executive rushed into the studio while the band was playing. He was very angry. He told Weems to get rid of that kid, as Crosby's sound was too close to his own. That could have been the end of Como's career right there if Weems had paid attention. Weems said no, though. He told the business leader that there would be no recording at all if Como wasn't on it. And Como stayed, but it was clear what was meant. He had to find his own voice if he wanted to make it in music. The bad things kept coming out. Where the Weems Orchestra played, said they would cancel the show if Como didn't get better. Weems sat him down and played him recordings of shows they had already done. The shock hit Como. He saw that his words weren't always clear and that he wasn't connecting with the people there the way he thought he was. That's when Weems told him something that would stay with him forever. Don't work so hard. Stop using speech tricks and just sing from the heart. Como paid attention to what the teacher said. And over time, he created the easy, smooth style that would make him famous. But things didn't go well right away. Everything changed in 1942. The Ted Weems Orchestra broke up when Weems and many of his players joined the Merchant Marines. This happened when World War II broke out. Como lost his job all of a sudden. He was 30 years old, married, and had to take care of his young son. He really thought about giving up music because he didn't see a clear future in it. He was a barber before he became a singer. He began to think about going back to it now. He even called the barber shop where he used to work in Canonsburg, Pennsylvania, to see if they would take him back. They were glad to. It was a mess in Como for weeks. For him, music had its good times, but barbering was steady and stable. He even practiced on family and friends to get ready for what seemed like the next part of his life. After that, he was about to hang up the mic for good when RCA Victor called him. They had plans to sign him. There was a steady paycheck and radio appearances as part of the deal, which meant real publicity. After telling his wife about it, Como agreed to the deal. He chose to try music one last time. Everything changed because of that choice. In 1945, after 2 years, he recorded the song Till the End of Time, which was based on a Chopin tune. Everyone in the room knew it was something special as soon as he was done recording. The song came out at the best possible time. The Second World War was coming to an end. Folks were looking for hope and things to get back to normal. It went straight to the top of the charts and stayed there for 10 weeks. It was his first gold record because it sold over 1 million copies. Como used to joke that his fans should thank RCA Victor for not making them get haircuts instead of hit songs. Como put out this simple song, Catch a Falling Star, in 1957, and it became a huge hit. It sold more than 1.4 million copies in less than a month. That was great for any singer, but Como was 46 years old at the time. The charts were dominated by younger singers, but he made it look easy. After that, in 1958, the song was the first ever to get a gold record from the RIA. It won the first Grammy for Best Male Pop Singing Performance the next year. Como's traditional style could still attract millions of people at a time when rock and roll was popular. In the US, Catch a Falling Star was the most popular song. In the UK, Magic Moments, another song from the same album, became a huge hit. It was #1 for 8 weeks in a row. Como was one of the few acts to have hits on both sides of the Atlantic at the same time. He did it without any tricks or flash. In the 1950s and early 1960s, Como had a string of comedy hits that topped the charts. Songs like Hot Diggity, Dog Ziggity Boom, and Papa Loves Mambo were played all the time. They were fun and catchy, and you could never forget them. Hot Diggity was #1 on the Billboard charts twice, for a total of 21 weeks. Como got a gold record for selling more than 1 million copies. Not long after, Papa Loves Mambo came along. It sold more than 500,000 copies and got a #4. In the years after World War II, when people wanted fun things to do, these songs were great. Even so, Como wasn't pleased. His baritone voice was smooth and great for songs in high-class pop. It wasn't about mambo and hot dogs that he wanted to be known for. It was those songs. People, on the other hand, wanted more of the silly and fun songs. He recorded a lot of important songs, but the novelty hits were what made his career. He had a hard time being taken seriously when compared to singers like Frank Sinatra and Bing Crosby. This difference became clear in 1958. Como put out 2 big songs, Magic Moments and Catch a Falling Star. Catch a Falling Star was a fun and light game. The song was his 14th and last #1, and it was the first single to be certified gold by the RIA. It also won him the first Grammy for Best Male Singing Performance. Burt Bacharach wrote Magic Moments, which had a more stylish sound. Many people thought it was the better song, but it only got a #4. This took place over and over. In 1956, Hot Diggity was one of his biggest hits. It stayed at the top of the charts for 2 weeks. In the meantime, no one paid attention to his more serious performances. It wasn't just what people wanted, it was also what his record company wanted. Como later said he had to record these songs because he had no other choice. He said many of them were rubbish and that he only sang them because RCA told him to. During recording sessions, the anger was clear. The musicians who worked with him said he didn't like singing these songs. He would rush into the studio, do 1 or 2 takes, and then leave right away. A session player remembered. He looked like he had just eaten a lemon. That didn't make him like them more, though. He tried to make things better in 1961. He put out an album called By Request, which was full of Broadway hits that he thought were some of his best. That song didn't sell nearly as well as his novelty ones. The people had already decided. Perry Como was the laid-back singer of catchy, fun songs, even when he didn't want to be. He talked about his work in an interview in 1998. "I shouldn't be too upset because those songs helped me buy a house and pay for my kids' schooling. I'd rather have spent my whole career singing the great American songs than crooning about hot dogs and Cupid dolls if I had my way." His work life was a strange mix of things. A lot of people loved him, but he felt stuck due to his own success. Not enough people knew how great he was because of the songs that made him famous. Folks still remember Perry Como's fun and silly songs first when they think of him. But there was an artist behind it all who wanted to be known for more. The same could be said about his work on TV. Since 1948 to 1963, The Perry Como Show was on the air. It was quickly becoming one of the most well-known comedy shows of its time. By the 1956 to 1957 season, it was the only NBC show to make it into the top 10 in the Nielsen ratings. People liked how calm and friendly he was, and he made them feel like he was singing just for them. Como sat on a stool in Sing to Me, Mr. C, one of the most loved parts of the show, playing songs that fans have asked for. This small one-on-one act made all the difference. Also, Como had an impact on the history of TV. His show was one of the first Sunday shows to be shown in color in September 1956. That was a risk that networks would only take if they were sure that a star could bring in viewers, and Como had won that trust. There was also a funny side to his show. In 1955, when star Kirk Douglas was a guest, it was one of the most talked about events. Douglas had a beard for Lust for Life because he was playing Vincent van Gogh. He didn't shave it off himself, so he let Como do it live on radio. It was a funny, unplanned moment that people talked about for weeks. People had different opinions on Como's laid-back style. Some people liked how calm and easygoing he was. A lot of people thought he was too slow and chill. Jerry Lewis, the comedian, once said that Como's theme song should be "I'm Walking in My Sleep." But if people thought that his ease meant he was lazy, they were wrong. His style wasn't a show. It was just the way he was. Life magazine polled young women in 1956 to find out who they thought would make the best husband. The winner wasn't a leader or movie star. The name was Perry Como. Even in a time when celebrities talk fast and have a lot of energy, his kindness and steady presence made him stand out. The same laid-back attitude showed up behind the scenes. On a show, he made it fun and easygoing, and that led to some moments that will never be forgotten. In 1957, Olympic swimmer and actor Esther Williams was one of the most well-known guests. A wardrobe mishap during the show almost turned into a big TV scandal. Como didn't get scared. Not at all. He just smiled, said good night, and jumped into the swimming pool that was built just for Williams' show. That was a great way to end the night. Perry Como made a deal with Kraft Foods in 1959 that broke all records. At the time, the $25 million deal was the biggest reward ever for TV talent. Now he hosts Perry Como's Kraft Music Hall every Wednesday night for the next 4 years. After that, the show changed to a monthly special that aired in between the Andy Williams Show and other shows like Kraft Suspense Theater. Como did not carry out business deals by himself. Roncom, his production business, took care of everything, even picking out what to air during the summer. He had time off, but people could still watch him in Perry Presents, a special show that started in 1959. That was near the end of 1962, right after the Cuban Missile Crisis. The families of U.S. service members could finally go back to Guantanamo Bay. In order to boost mood on the base, Robert McNamara, the Secretary of Defense, asked Como to bring his show there. Como agreed, and he was the first performer to come since the bad times. He and his team filmed for 8 days, capturing the joy of the family's arrivals. It first played on December 12, 1962, and had many times to remember. Perry Como, on the other hand, had the good looks that got him a 7-year deal with 20th Century Fox in 1943. He wasn't a movie star because of how he looked, though. Something for the Boys, March of Time, Dollface, and If I'm Lucky are the 4 pictures he made for Fox. He was also in words and music for MGM. He had many chances to be in front of the camera, but he never felt comfortable. He knew that the parts didn't fit him. Because this is Hollywood, some people wanted to change his life story. They tried to get people to listen to coal miner instead of barber because they thought it sounded more exciting. Como would not let it go. Fred Hoffman, a skeptical columnist, said that the barber story was just a way to get attention. Como took him to the groomer at Fox Studios and shaved and cut his hair properly. That put an end to that. His first time on a movie set made him even less sure about the business. He showed up to work on something for the Boys, but wasn't called for 2 weeks. He sat in his changing room. It took him 2 weeks to wait, but he played golf. 5 weeks went by before the company needed him. The director had no idea who he was when he finally got to the set. We were in Hollywood. It was no longer cool to watch musical pictures when Como signed. He was just one of the contract players who filled in when needed. It didn't get better even after he got a part in Words and Music, one of MGM's big movies. The writing was really bad. That before the movie was over, his character's name changed from Eddie Anders to Perry Como for no reason. Walt Winchell, a writer, called it out in print less than 2 weeks before it came out, saying that someone at MGM must have been sleeping when they wrote it. It was clear to Como that it was true. He asked MGM to let him out of his deal, and they did. He said I was making them wait for nothing, and they were throwing away mine. Como said in 1949, while doing the Chesterfield Supper Club on radio and TV, why he would never need Hollywood again. More good things will happen to me because of TV than films ever have. The reason should be clear. It's okay for me to be myself on TV. I was always another guy in pictures. I walk over like any other jerk in a tux. He was right. After that, he got offers for parts in films, but he was too busy with TV to care. They met at a picnic in Chartiers Creek, Pennsylvania. Perry Como was with Roselle Bellin. He was 21 years old and worked as a barber. She didn't know it, but she was going to meet the love of her life when she was 19. It didn't take Como long to fall in love with her, so he did what he did best. He sang. You don't know how great the song was. It worked. It was easy for them to connect. That was the start of their love story. In Meadville, Pennsylvania, on July 31st, 1933, they got married. It wasn't easy in the beginning. Como's band was always on the road, and money was always tight. They saved every penny they could and lived in small flats. Things were hard for us. We were cheap, so we lived on what he made, even though money was tight. They stuck together through everything. They would become famous later, but they loved each other very much already. As Como's success grew, Roselle stayed out of the public eye. She kept their family safe from the fame stresses. He became famous all over the country, but at home, he was not famous at all. They were married for an amazing 65 years, which doesn't happen very often in Hollywood. Roselle talked about her husband with the same love she had from the beginning in 1998, just a few days before their anniversary. He was and still is the kindest, most humble person I've ever met. They did more together than just love each other. They were both born into immigrant homes. They were deeply religious Catholics, and their beliefs kept them grounded. Como always had faith in his life. He grew up in a strict Catholic family and carried those values with him into his work. He never forgot what was important to him. Unlike many people in Hollywood, he stayed out of trouble and had a quiet life when he wasn't working. His time as a star in the 1940s and 1950s was very important. He stayed true to himself, even though he was very successful. For their 25th wedding anniversary in 1958, Como and Roselle went to Italy. They met privately with Pope Pius XII while they were on a trip. Como thought that the meeting would stay between them, but the Vatican press office made photos of it public. He was mad because he never wanted to use his faith to get attention, not because he wanted to hide it. His faith was important to him. He made decisions based on it, but he never felt the need to say it out loud. He was different from most famous people because he was quiet. He turned down chances that didn't fit with what he believed in. He preferred privacy over being known. He made sure that he would be buried in a Catholic church when he quit his job and moved to Florida. He stayed true to what mattered most even after he died. In 1998, everything was different. Roselle died on August 12th, just a few days after their wedding anniversary. It was terrible in Como. For 65 years, she had been with him. He lost his way without her. He stopped being around other people and spent most of his time at home in Jupiter, Florida. His Christmas shows, which used to happen every year, stopped airing in 1994. Roselle turned down every chance to come back after he left. It wasn't about the attention anymore. His health began to get worse. He got Alzheimer's, but his family didn't tell anyone. He had always kept to himself, and they respected that. He died peacefully in his sleep on May 12, 2001. He is almost 89 years old. The official cause was natural, but people who knew him well thought he never really got over losing Roselle. That sound of Perry Como made you feel like you were at home. It was smooth, natural, and warm. He was more than just a singer. He was there, a calm and steady figure in show business. People tuned in to hear him, not just because he was a great singer. They liked him because he made them happy. It's not often that people have that kind of relationship. It's what made his work last for decades and help him win some of the biggest TV awards ever. At the end of the 1950s, Como won more Emmys than anyone else. The first award he won was for Best Male Singer in 1955. He beat out Frank Sinatra and Eddie Fisher. After a year, he did something even more amazing. 2 Emmys were given to him in one night. One for Best Male Personality and one for Best Comedy Show. It's very rare for 2 teams to win in that way. Then, 1957 came along. Nearly a third of the country, or 54.2 million people, watched his show. The next Emmy win seemed like it was bound to happen. It became more difficult to win by 1958. The 2 of them were big names in TV, and their shows often competed for the most viewers. But Como won in the end. He won again in 1959, making it 5 years in a row that he won an Emmy. That had never been done by a man before. For more than 30 years, no one beat his mark. Not just because of the awards, 1956 was a great year for Como, but because of what they meant. In February of that year, he was the first well-known singer to win the Christopher Award, which is usually given to serious works of art. People all over the world were brought to tears when he sang Ave Maria on his Christmas Eve special. After only a few months, he shared a Peabody Award with Jackie Gleason. This had never happened before. People didn't usually share Peabody Awards, and definitely not by 2 artists who are going up against each other. But the group thought they were unique. Both of them were perfectionists. Both put on shows that were the best they could be. Even though they were rivals, they stayed friends. They often called each other after their shows to laugh about the ratings fight. Como had been mostly quiet for almost 30 years by 1990, but his influence on TV had never gone away. In that same year, he joined giants like Walt Disney and Lucille Ball in the Television Hall of Fame. That had never happened before. Every single member of the voting group agreed that he should be inducted. Como gave a short, 90-second acceptance speech at the event, which was full of big names in the business. He never made a big deal out of things. The people who chose him for the Hall of Fame praised him for creating the variety show style and making TV feel more casual and friendly. They also said that he had changed the business world as a whole. Como was one of the first artists to record his shows ahead of time. This became common after a while. The Kennedy Center honor he got in 1987 was one of the best things that happened to him in his career. He was the oldest winner that year, at 75 years old. Betty Davis and Alvin Ailey were already in this exclusive group. President Ronald Reagan and First Lady Nancy Reagan were at the event. There had never been a tribute section like Como's before. They remade his famous Sing to Me, Mr. C double prime segment instead of just showing performances of his songs. Letters from fans from over 50 years ago were read out loud. It was a big deal for him, but when Frank Sinatra came on, it was the biggest surprise of the night. People had seen them as competitors for years and always compare their styles. No one expected Sinatra to say what he did that night. Como's easy charm had always made him a little jealous. There was a standing ovation at the end of the honor. Porter Como never tried to be famous. He was liked by many because he seemed to have no trouble with anything. Even though his awards were nice, they didn't change what his fans already knew. He was different from everyone else.